श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पदान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नित्यनामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरतुषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Today evening we are continuing our discussion on themes from Bhagavad Gita. And the theme that we are continuing today is related to karma. So just for a minute, I will briefly recap what we had done last time, and then we would start our today's topic. Because nowadays we are meeting once in 2 weeks. Earlier when I started, it was almost once a week. Okay. So last time our topic was guna and karma. So if you recall, we discussed how. So basically, the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are karma, and the last 6 chapters of Gita are jnana, and the middle 6 are bhakti. So that is how generally it is understood. So bhakti is sandwiched between karma and jnana. Right. So currently we are discussing from the karma, the first 6 chapters, and later we will go to the last 6 also. So last time, if you remember, we discussed how karma is past and future also. So for example, we saw how the dialogue between Bhishma and Yudhishthir, where he's talking about how the past karma is like a seed, and the present actions are like fructifying that into a nice plant and tree so that one gets flowers and fruits and future seed. So if you carefully see, there is a lot of importance given to that fructification process, or the ensuring that you take care of the tree well. That is the future, right? So we also briefly saw last time, if you recall, the discussion between Nahusha and Maharaj Yudhishthir on the topic of jati, and how it was connected to everything, guna karma. Then we had a lot of discussion about karma as position as well as journey. So basically we saw how, if you see carefully, Krishna in the Mahabharata, they focus on the journey of life, the Pandavas, and then the position is obtained. I think we also discussed elaborately the case of Rahul Gandhi and Narendra Modi, for example, where one was focused on the journey and he got the position also, but the other person has been primarily focused on the position. And also we saw about the influence of modes. We saw in detail about how so this was from the 14th chapter Gita. We saw about how Sattva Guna conditions one to happiness, and it's a wonderful platform to be in, because you are actually happy and satisfied in this world in what you're doing. So that happiness is not necessarily to be seen as a source of bondage, but rather it can be seen as a wonderful environment where one can happily continue with whatever one is doing. And Rajoguna, we saw about its core nature being to looking for opportunity, how a person in Rajoguna looks for opportunity in every situation, and Tamoguna's core nature we saw as grumbling. So happiness, opportunity, and grumbling as three natures. And then we also related that to this whole Black Lives Matters movement that is going on in America, about how simply by grumbling, nobody progresses. And in fact, we were seeing various statistics also, how when government helps such people, nothing really much happens. They just keep grumbling and their condition only goes from bad to worse over a period of time. So this was briefly some points that we saw last time. This time our topic is, if you see, as I put it here, it's about karma only. But there are many interesting themes that we're going to look at. One important theme, so mainly two themes we are looking at today. The first thing about how to deal with seniors when they commit a mistake. So, right, so using the Bhagavad Gita itself, we see how Bhishma and Drona were on the side of adharma and how Arjuna had a difficulty to deal with that. So when one seniors are doing something that is perhaps not so correct, then how does one deal with that situation? So that's the first thing. And then also there is a question of aparad, Vaishnava aparad, or offenses. One feels that if I question senior, then what happens, and so on. The position of a Vaishnava in Nishkama Karma Yoga. So in fact, Nishkama Karma Yoga comes at the end. And these are some of the verses of Bhagavad Gita that we're going to refer to today in our discussion. 1.36, 2.4, 2.5, 2.32, 3.1, 4.16, 5.11, and 5.12. These are the verses that we are going to refer today. Okay, so let's put up the question. So what is the topic for today? So the first thing that, as I said, we're going to look at is how to deal with superiors when they make mistakes. So that is the first theme. The second question or the theme that we are dealing today is how to distinguish between what is aparad or Vaishnava aparad or offenses and the right to question actions of seniors. So, we will do some discussion on this. Again, it is based on the Gita. Then an allied question would come up whether Vaishnavas are exempt from certain exceptions of Shastras and Sanatana Dharma, whether they have some exemptions from some dharmic principles. And finally, we would briefly like to touch on Nishkama Karma Yoga as Krishna speaks in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So let us see how far we get. So starting with the first theme, right? How to deal with superiors when they make mistakes or, when they commit something that one would call as a blunder. So if you see carefully, the Bhagavad Gita first chapter, text number 36, you see over there clearly Arjuna's dilemma. Papam eva shreya dasman hatvaitan atatayinaha tasman narha vayam hantum dartra rashtran sa bandhavan swajanam hi katam hatva sukina syama madhava. Where Arjuna is telling sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Right. So Arjuna here is very clearly indicating his concern, one of his concerns about why he doesn't want to fight the battle. As we have discussed before, some other concerns that Arjuna raised were pretty valid. Valid as in it was very right kind of concerns. Like he was afraid about Varna Sankaraha, he was afraid about Kula Dharma, Jati Dharma being destroyed and so on. So those kind of concerns were perfectly fine, and we have acknowledged that as well. In fact, Krishna doesn't even refute those concerns in the Bhagavad Gita. But if you see this particular concern that Arjuna is having is mainly because he is reluctant to, fight with Bhishma and Drona. Because of Arjuna's Sanskriti, he is coming from, he has a very good background, Arjuna. So when his superiors like Bhishma and Drona are there in front of him, he's very reluctant to fight with them. Right. So in fact, if you see 1.36 Bhagavad Gita, the verse that we read, where he's saying sin will overcome us if we kill aggressors. This is basically, so there are many commentaries of Acharyas where they talk about this. that there are two types of Shastras. One is called Artha Shastra and one is called Dharma Shastra. Artha Shastra basically talks about how to live in this world transactionally, how to live profitably. And as far as Artha Shastras are concerned, one should punish aggressors, right? But Arjuna doesn't want to use the facility given by Artha Shastra. Arjuna is actually quoting Dharma Shastra in this particular verse, 1.36 Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is saying that sin will overcome us if we kill these aggressors. Because according to Dharma Shastra, it is more based on the fact that, if somebody does anything personally against you, then don't take revenge and forgive them. That kind of a concept. But the problem is Arjuna's logic is flawed over here because he is not living in an ashram. He is living in the world. And even if somebody is on the higher level of Dharma Shastra, where forgiveness is a very wonderful paradigm to practice, Artha Shastras are very important in the transactional world, right? And because Arjuna is in the transactional world, he has to be ready to punish the aggressors. But Arjuna is quoting Dharma Shastra and saying that sin will overcome us if we kill the aggressors, and he doesn't want to. Going further, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, text 4 and 5, there it is even more clear. Arjuna's logic comes out even crystal clear. Arjuna says in the 2nd chapter, text 4, Katam Bhishma Maham Sankhe Dronam Cha Madhusudana. O killer of enemies, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? So he's saying very clearly that Bhishma and Drona are worshipable people. I can't, fight with them. And then he's saying, if you see 2.5, he says, Guru no hatva hi mahanubhavan, that verse. He says, it would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superior. So basically, if you see in this verse, it is very clear. He is saying that these people are on the wrong side because they want worldly gain, but still they are superiors. And if they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. So if you look at this particular verse, 2.5 Bhagavad Gita, it is very interesting because Arjuna's, this particular mentality comes out when he's dealing with his superiors. Arjuna's dilemma is his superiors have done some mistake or they are doing some mistakes, but because they are superiors, he doesn't want to question them or he doesn't want to do anything against them. Are you getting it? So this is Arjuna's dilemma. So basically, here are some superiors of Arjuna who have done mistake and Arjuna is acknowledging it. He's saying that they desire worldly gain. He's saying that in Bhagavad Gita 2.5. But they are my superiors, he's saying. So मतलब गलती कर रहे वो लोग लेकिन मेरे superior है वो लोग. Okay, so if you see, I put up this point on the slide. There is this dilemma between respecting position and analyzing their respecting their position and analyzing their decisions. Actually, it's not position; it should be decision. Analyzing their decisions. So basically, when our seniors do some mistake, analyzing their wrong decisions and dealing with that is not considered wrong. That is fine, right? But still, one should be respecting their position. And the best example is Yudhishthir, who, if you see carefully, before the war starts, he goes and offers respects to Bhishma. He goes and offers respects to Drona and Kripacharya. And to all of them, he's falling at their feet and he's asking that, please give us blessings that we will win this war. And furthermore, he's also asking, how can we kill you? And all three of them are very happy that Yudhishthir is respecting their position and seeking blessings. And all three of them, Bhishma, Drona and Kripa, are giving their heartfelt blessings, saying that, my dear Yudhishthir, you will surely win the war. And Bhishma and Drona say, as far as our death is concerned, it will be revealed at the right time. Kripacharya is saying that I cannot be killed, so forget that part. And all three of them, interestingly, also say that, my dear Yudhishthir, had you not come to us seeking blessings, then we would have cursed you to lose the war. So what you see over there is, Yudhishthir was respecting the position of the seniors, but at the same time, he had analyzed their mistakes and he was ready to kill them. So basically, he was very clear about it. So
Yudhishthira reconciled this, that we have to respect our seniors, but at the same time ये लोग ने गलती किया तो इसका भी इनको दंड देना पड़ेगा, right? So basically this is very interesting because this is very difficult for most people to do. If you see carefully, either extreme is easy. Arjuna's position is what he's saying, that oh, I respect them so much that I cannot take any action for their wrongdoing. Correct? That is one extreme. Another extreme is that somebody says I don't respect anybody, like Duryodhana was there. He was not respecting any seniors seriously. He was only using them. But Yudhishthir strikes the right balance between respecting their position and at the same time analyzing their fault and thereby deciding to punish them. If you see very carefully, it is very difficult, right? That you respect someone, your superior, at the same time you understand where they are going wrong. And this is not considered aparadh. So this is what we actually want to discuss today. So if you see from the Ramayana, right? So we have this story of Jabali. When Bharat comes to invite Ram back in Chitrakoot, he goes and tells Ram that please come back and rule over Ayodhya. At that point of time, this Jabali, one rishi, has come along with Vashishta, and he starts talking atheistic philosophy. He says that what is all this? What is this word given to your father? Your father is dead and gone. Everything is finished. He kind of talks atheistic philosophy. Ram at that time, he actually becomes very unhappy. He tells that how come if you are such a Nastic person talking all this, then how come you are appointed as a minister in our kingdom? And then of course Vashishta comes and says that don't worry Ram, his intention was not like that. He was only trying to bring you back. But the point is, even though Jabali was a superior, when the action that he did, now here the action of Jabali refers to the words that he spoke, because the words that he spoke were against dharma, that is why Ram was ready to analyze that thing. He didn't feel that as a problem. Just because he's superior, he didn't feel that, oh, I cannot question him, right? So best example we see is of Prahlad also. As a father, he respected Hiranyakashipu's position. But whatever adharmic activities he did, or, that part of it, he actually was ready to question him. Correct? And this aspect of personalities that we see in our Shastra is actually very, very interesting for us to see how to follow in our life. Where if our superiors are have done something wrong like Bhishma, Drona, then how at the same time we respect them, and at that same time we don't give them a complete clean chit, as in we are ready to analyze whatever they have done, and how to reconcile between these two. This is something amazing that we see in the Mahabharata in this context. Correct? Because it's not that easy actually, because most people would tend to feel that if you're questioning your senior's action, then you are actually committing an offense against them. People tend to feel like that. But Yudhishthir was always very clear that just because I'm questioning these people, it doesn't mean that I am offending them. No, I respect them. लेकिन ये जो कर रहे हैं सब गलत कर रहे हैं लोग. So he was very clear on that, which Arjun had a challenge, right? And that challenge of Arjuna comes out in the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the first point. Moving ahead to the second point of our discussion. So this is, in continuation with the point number one. So somebody may say, how to distinguish between offenses or Vaishnava aparadh, or maybe offense to your family members, your parents or whatever, superiors, and questioning their actions, correct? So we said there are two things. One is questioning somebody's action, and at the same time, the second thing is, respecting them. So how does one strike this balance and not end up offending? So this is the second point that we wish to discuss today. So if you see in the slide, the first point, the point that I am saying here is, there are two things. There is always an action and there is an intention behind that action. So whenever we question an intention which a person does not have, right? A person does some action, but we question their intention wrongly, then that actually becomes aparadh. So simple example. So if you see in the slide, I have put the example of Sita questioning Lakshman. So what was Lakshman's action? Lakshman's action was that he was not ready to go to the forest inside where Ram was calling him. Correct. So when Ram had gone to kill Marich, so he was calling out. So right, that sound came suddenly. Hey Lakshman, hey Sita. And Lakshman understood that this is not Ram's voice, but this is that Marich's voice most likely. But Sita was concerned and she wanted Lakshman to go. But Lakshman was not willing to go. That was the action of Lakshman. But Sita, what did she do? She questioned his intention, saying that you are staying here so that you can enjoy me. So then that becomes aparadh. So let's be very clear about it. So if somebody has done a wrong action, questioning that action is not technically considered an aparadh. Right? So like Bhishma, Drona, the actions that they did were wrong. Whatever intention they may have had, but that action was problematic. And questioning that is never an aparadh or never wrong, which Arjuna was feeling that it is wrong on our part to do like this to our superiors because they are our superiors. Correct. Yudhishthir was very clear about it. So similarly, I'm saying here, what is aparadh? Correct. Or even what Lakshman did with Bharat. When Bharat came with a big army to Chitrakoot, Lakshman immediately saw that action, but he concluded something on the intention by saying that, oh, Bharat has come to fight. So Ram said, how do you know he has come to fight? You don't know that he has come to fight. He has just come with an army. That's it. So you just, how can you make a statement that he has come to fight? So then that actually becomes aparadh. So we have to be very clear that we have understood this difference between what is an offense, which is, so Vaishnava aparadh is basically making a judgment about someone without having completely involved in their life. So somebody is going through something, their action we see, and based on that, one comes to the conclusion that this is offense or no. So just like, so again, for this, we have a reference in the Bhagavad Gita. If you see in the Gita, when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this particular very famous verse in the 4th chapter, which I'm sure all of us know, 4.16, Kim karma kima karmeti kavayo pyatra mohitaha. Tatte karma pravakshami yajnatva mokshase shubhat. He's saying that even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Kim karma kim akarmeti. So that means what is action, what is vikarma, what is akarma. All these things. So if you see the next verse also, in 4.17, Krishna says, Karmanyo hyapi bodhavyam, bodhavyam cha vikarmana, akarmana cha bodhavyam, gahana karmano gati. Krishna clearly says that the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. So what is action? What is forbidden action? What is, inaction? Very difficult to understand. So that is why, because all this depends on intention also of a person. Correct. So as we have discussed many times, person, the same action may be karma for some, may be vikarma for somebody else. Correct. Because the intention may be totally different. So it becomes, so just to give a modern example to understand. So I think I read about this somewhere, heard that one of the bills that our government is planning to bring at some point of time, this BJP government, is a population bill, which is they want to restrict, they want to have some kind of a bill. I don't know how it would come, but they're talking about it, where they want to have a bill which restricts everybody to have 2 children. Right. Now, if you see such a bill, fundamentally it is against Sanatana Dharma, because we know that, right, because generally our Shastra doesn't permit, stopping of population in this particular fashion, which may lead to use of contraceptives, abortion, etc. But at the same time, if you see their intention, it's a very clear thing, right? The right-wing BJP, RSS, their intention is that currently what happens, it's only the Hindus who have the least fertility rate in India. In fact, in most states in India, the fertility rate of Hindus is less than 2, which is the replacement level. So when the fertility rate is less than 2, basically your population starts coming down. Whereas the Muslim fertility rate is pretty high in most places. At least there is a difference of 0.5 to 1 between the fertility rates, right? So basically they are planning such a bill. Now, if you look at such a bill, externally it does seem that it is against Sanatana Dharma. So it is vikarma. But if you see the intention and you see why they are doing, otherwise basically in 200-300 years, there may be an Islamic state over here. So then one understands that no, the intention is actually very clear why they want to do that. Correct. So why I'm giving such an example is because it's very difficult just by looking at an action to understand whether it is a right or wrong. And that is what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita. So that is why without understanding someone's intention, to question their intention actually becomes very difficult. Correct? So I'll just give some more examples on this, where this could be an offense or where it is not an offense. So just like Bhakti Charu Maharaj, all of us know, right? Everyone is praying because he has contracted corona, etc. So I had heard and kind of almost sure that he had some, there was some festival of his disciples a couple of weeks before in June, because he had left India somewhere in May end or June first week and went to America. And there he had some disciple meet, and there was one disciple who did some Pada Puja to him, etc. And the disciple who did Pada Puja, he was apparently having this, he was COVID positive. So basically, when one hears something like this, then one could say that yes, perhaps that action wasn't correct. Where if somebody is, to go very close to your spiritual master, and that also it's such a time when the whole world is having a pandemic, it is unnecessarily exposing him to a risk. So that action, it can be questioned. So please note what I'm saying. I'm using this as an example to say that you can question the action. Why did you go and wash your Guru Maharaj's feet, when it is very clear that one has to maintain social distancing, because otherwise you could even unknowingly do it. But again, to say that he intentionally did that is wrong, because that would be an offense, because most likely the devotee did not have any such intention. Perhaps he didn't even know that he is COVID positive until his guru first got, and then they tested and they understood that this fellow is also positive. Correct. So the point is, an action can be questioned, a decision can be questioned, and that's not an offense. But to question an intention is an offense when that intention is not there. And if you question an action when the action never happened, that is also offense. Correct. So just like all these Ritviks say that Prabhupada was poisoned and all that. So that is clearly offense, because that action only never happened. There was nothing like poisoning that happened. So then that's clearly offense. So why I'm saying this? Because you should know what is offense and what is not offense. Otherwise, what happens is our superior does some mistake, and that is also not questioned. So, so just like one nice example came recently, you all may be knowing that a couple of weeks back in Pakistan, there was an airplane crash and some 100 people died. Correct. Now, there was a very nice article that explained why that air crash happened, or one mistake that happened. It said that had to do with the Asian culture. Asian culture means in Asia, what happens in India or Pakistan, seniors and superiors are respected a lot, and their wrong actions are never corrected by juniors. So it seems basically when they went through the whole chat between the senior pilot and the first officer in the plane from the black box, and they also went through the conversation between the captain and the ATC, air traffic controller in Pakistan, what they understood was that this captain who was flying that PIA flight, which crashed near Karachi, he was a very senior person in the air, he was a very senior captain, senior pilot. So the first officer and that ATC, that air traffic controller, that fellow who was responding to the captain from the ground, they were junior to him. So it seems because of that, what happened is, when that captain was making certain technical mistakes, these two people are not immediately correcting him. They are very politely trying to say something, sir, this way it has to be done, that way it has to be done. But what people are saying after reading that whole transcription is that they should have outrightly told the captain, "Arey Baba, तूने ये गलती किया है, अभी ये मत कर, अभी ये करना पड़ेगा तेरे को." But because of that respect for senior, which generally is there more in Asian cultures than American cultures, they said that these people didn't do that, and eventually that plane crashed. So I'm just giving this as an example that it is not to be seen as so offensive if you question the action of the superior. Just because he's superior, his action is also unquestionable, is actually not Vedic culture, as you see from Bhagavad Gita. Correct. So I'm just giving another one or two more examples to nail this point. So just like, this recently, that a month ago, there was this Surleen Kaur, right? So she was a stand-up comedian who made some derogatory remark against ISKCON or whatever. and some of our devotees wanted to put a case on them and so on. So there was a discussion about whether to put a case on her and so on. And meanwhile, it seems what happened is there was one sannyasi one leader of our ISKCON movement. He wrote a letter saying that we should forgive her and we should call her to our temple, and we should use this as an opportunity to tell her about ISKCON, give her prasad, garland, everything. So some people were very upset. So because he was a very big leader, he couldn't be openly questioned. But the point is that even if somebody is a big leader, if someone else, I mean, I'm not talking about you and me, if some manager wants to question, that's not an offense. It's perfect, because you're questioning the decision. You're not questioning the person, or it's not that you don't respect him only. But the decision can always be questioned, and that is not to be seen as an offense, right? So aisa nahi hota. So sometimes if we confuse that too much, then it's a problem. Another one thing I wish to say here and conclude this point, it is also important for us to ensure that our superiors, we don't make normal people offend our superiors. So now I want to talk here about Prabhupada. So, about Prabhupada, there is something called, Prabhupada Conversations. So perhaps some of you may have seen that. There are 37 volumes of Prabhupada Conversations. Govind Prabhu was once telling us that, Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj would tell him that these Prabhupada Conversations are one of the most dangerous things to read. And in fact, he had suggested him not to read it. The reason is that, a conversation is a very casual thing. So all of us in our normal day-to-day life with whomever who's sitting next to us, we may crack some joke, or we may be in a light movement, we may say something, correct? Everything is not very formally said in a casual conversation. But when everything is recorded, and if you quote everything, you can actually make people offend a superior. So I'll just give some examples, because this is actually very much this has happened. So there were one or two occasions, for example, where Prabhupada, where he was walking, going on a morning. Okay, I'll tell you a simple one first. In Juhu, there was one Mr. Sethi, who was a life member and very favorable person. So there is one Prabhupada conversation where it comes that the Sethi tells Prabhupada that in 1947, during the partition, there was some riots later after the partition. And the Sethi is telling Prabhupada that I killed a couple of Muslims, during the riots with my gun. And Prabhupada responds and says, wow, that is also Krishna consciousness. So now, if you see this particular statement, and if somebody were to quote this in a general sense to some common people, or somebody would hear it, they would feel that, Hare, you're saying that in a riots to kill Muslim is Krishna consciousness. So they will unnecessarily question the intention. So we know in which, so perhaps it was in a lighter sense or whatever. But the point is, such conversations, when they become very public, then it actually becomes very difficult. So there's another thing which is actually a little more serious, especially nowadays, this Black Lives Matters is going on, right? So there are many conversations of Prabhupada where Prabhupada is talking with his Western disciples. So I'll just tell you one of them. So Prabhupada is walking with some Western disciples somewhere in America. And as they're walking, there is one black man, gentleman, who's driving a car. And Prabhupada says to these people that, look at this black man wearing a big suit and driving a big Cadillac car and thinking that he's great. Now, if you see this comment, in fact, unfortunately, because all these conversations are published, what has happened is many scholars have used these kind of conversations to accuse Prabhupada or acharyas of racism. Now, if you carefully see, Prabhupada's intention was never like that. In fact, Prabhupada was very broad-minded. He gave sannyas initiation to black people, right, from that background, right? So he was much more broad-minded than perhaps anybody. There was nothing like nepotism or, caste consciousness for Prabhupada. But the thing is, these are very casual conversations. And when Prabhupada is saying black man driving a car and thinking he's great, Prabhupada's that comment applies even to a white man who's driving a car and thinking he's great. Basically, what he wants to say is that, these people simply, they're going around just because they have a big facility, they think that they're very great people. But unfortunately, because all these things are published in the form of conversations, and if you Google it on, you put it on your, what is that called, folio and all, you will get such quotes. I don't know whether in folio it is there, but I mean, these are all part of conversation. So basically what happens is unnecessarily one brings. So why I'm saying this, because one has to be very careful when one quotes Prabhupada, especially conversations also, because why this is connected to this topic is because people may see the quote, but they may not see the intention of Prabhupada. Right. So I'll just give you one last example on this and move ahead. I'll give you one last example of this and move ahead. There is one Prabhupada conversation where Prabhupada casually, Prabhupada had gone to the Vatican, I believe. Hare Krishna, bro, can you mute your mic? Hare Krishna, bro, can you mute your mic? Saragrai, bro, can you mute him? He's not aware, I guess it's on or whatever. Okay. Saragrai, bro? Okay. So, yeah, thank you. So, basically, so why I'm saying this is, okay, I'll just give this example in end. I think Prabhupada was in Vatican or somewhere, and then he mentions that even in a very light conversation, that even we could have a separate country. That means even devotees can have a separate country like that. Prabhupada mentioned that in some conversation. Now, what happened is some devotees used this conversation to talk even in a Bhagavatam class, saying that, oh, even devotees, at some point we should have a separate country where everyone is Vaishnava, and our Prime Minister is also Vaishnava, so things like that. Now, actually speaking, in India, to say like this, especially because this was about Sridham Mayapur, where Mayapur could be like something like that, a separate country or something. This is actually, illegal. It's basically, it attracts what is called as sedation charges, where you are trying to instigate people and break the country. So some devotees told this as speakers that you can't quote such things of Prabhupada because they were made in a very light conversation, light note. And unfortunately, because everything is recorded, you bring it out and people unnecessarily wrongly question the intention of Prabhupada when perhaps he did not even have that. It was not even very seriously made. So why I'm saying this is, so please try to understand the context. The context that we're talking is, one could question actions of superiors, right? But you can't unnecessarily question their intention, especially when you don't know that intention. And at the same time, whoever our superiors are, our gurus, etc., we should be careful that we don't present their words to common public in such a way that they unnecessarily question their intention when they did not even have such an intention. Correct? When they did not even have such an intention. So basically, this is very important, especially about these blacks, because this I also saw many scholarly articles in America where many professors have used such statements of Prabhupada to say that ISKCON is based on racism, but actually it is not like that. Correct? So we have that other pastime also, where when Gargamuni went to Prabhupada and said that these Negroes are Negroes are derogatory way of addressing the blacks. He said that Negroes are troubling us, not obeying, and so on. And Prabhupada finally told him that, as far as I am concerned, you are a white Negro. Because he didn't really distinguish between these two classes of people. He was very clear about it. Correct. But then that is not clear when you, in an isolated way, quote one conversational point. Okay. So we said all this in order to say that there is a distinction between offense or Vaishnava aparadh and questioning actions of superiors. Just because you have questioned the action of superiors, you are not an aparadhi. But if you unnecessarily question their intentions without really knowing what they intended, then certainly it is aparadh. And the basis of what we are discussing is the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text number 16-17, where Krishna very clearly says that what is karma, what is vikarma, what is akarma, Gahana karmano gatihi. It is very difficult to understand, Krishna says. That means it's very difficult to understand. Why it is difficult to understand? Because the intention is very difficult to understand. One doesn't know what is one's intention when one does an action. तो action देख के बताना कि ये आदमी का intention गलत था या सही था बहुत मुश्किल है. So that is the point that is being said by Krishna over here. Right. So let's go ahead now in our discussion. So the next immediate question that comes up is about 1 second. Yeah. So now let's come back to the Gita. So if you see the second So this is also, I've taken this particular point If you see on the screen, I've taken this point because sometimes people feel that Vaishnavas are exempt from certain shastrical injunctions and so on. So I just thought that that part should be discussed a little bit. So this was more especially in the current context of the eclipse that had happened, that solar eclipse that had happened recently. If you know, I think Sunday or something, last Sunday. And what had happened was there was one DT ministry letter that was circulated, which basically kind of tried to say that these things are not for devotees. Devotees are not going to get sutak or contaminated, and one can cook during the eclipse or do whatever one is doing regularly. And it was, talking, it had a tone as if Vaishnavas are completely exempt from everything. Correct. So that's why I want to talk on this. It's again in the Bhagavad Gita, you see this in the 3rd chapter. So basically what happens in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna basically summarizes the entire Gita, literally. He talks about everything in some way or the other. And the first question, if you see in the 3rd chapter, 1st verse, Arjuna is asking, Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janadaya tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. Arjuna is asking, why do you, Krishna, want me to engage in this ghastly world war? Right? If you think that Buddhi is superior. So basically, Arjuna, when he heard 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he heard about Sthita Prajna, he heard about Apuryamana Pachala Pratishtam, he heard in 2nd chapter, Tani Sarvani Sayyamya Yukta Asita Matparaha. When Arjuna heard all this, Arjuna started feeling that, why should I do, these routine things like unnecessarily fighting ghastly war, where I can peacefully just think of Krishna and, I can practice whatever Krishna has spoken between Bhagavad Gita 2.54 to 2.72, where I am, completely focused on Krishna rather than, fighting and killing so many people. So this is something that our Arjuna thought, right? Because of which he said. So this is the question really. So the question is a devotee actually exempt from what Shastra is saying? So for example, if Shastra is saying that Swadharma is important, if Shastra is saying, like we've seen 3rd chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is very clearly saying in the 3rd chapter Bhagavad Gita that even if somebody thinks that he is above everything, still he should do the duties in the world like everyone else, just to set an example. And Krishna says, even I do that when I come to this world. So if you see the Bhagavad Gita, it is very clear, especially the 3rd chapter Bhagavad Gita, there are so many verses where it becomes very clear that even if someone is truly transcendental, but even if somebody is transcendental, in the world, he does everything like someone else only. Okay, so why I'm saying this is because look at the question that I've put over there on the slide. So I'm saying there, does Shastra give or mention? So first thing, is Vaishnava a disposition or it is a position? Right? So this is a question that we are asking. Position means you understand, right? Position means like we have Varnashram. So in Varnashram, everything is a position. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. These are all positions. The question is, what about Vaishnava? Is Vaishnava also a position? No, the answer is very clear. Vaishnava is a disposition. It's a disposition of the mind, of the consciousness that someone is a Vaishnava or someone is a Jnani. That is a disposition. Jnani rehna disposition hai. Yogi, it's a disposition. It's not a position. So why I'm saying this is because the Shastra doesn't give or mention any special concessions for someone who has the disposition of a Vaishnava. Aisa kidhar bhi nahi hai. Correct. So for example, if you see very carefully, right, if you see in the Krishna book also, you see how Krishna and everyone followed all eclipses properly. Correct. So we know how Krishna goes to Kurukshetra during the solar eclipse, and they are all following it by doing all the rituals properly. And then they take bath, and then only they cook and eat. Right. Even if you see Navadvip, when Lord Chaitanya was born, he was born during the lunar eclipse. And at that time, not only the Vaishnavas, but all the common people also were in Ganga, because that is the traditional way of observing an eclipse. where you enter a river and you stay in the river and you chant the name of God. Right? So we read about this, how during the lunar eclipse, all the residents of Navadvip were in Ganga and they were all chanting the names of Krishna, and how all the Vaishnavas were so happy that they said that let the eclipse continue forever. Right? We read that. So it is not that Advaita Acharya and Srivas Thakur were cooking and thinking that it's okay, all these rules are not for us. Why? Because the Shastra never says anything like this. कहीं भी ऐसा लिखा नहीं है कि वैष्णव के लिए special concession है. It doesn't happen like that. So that is why we see in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna is making it very clear to Arjuna that, my dear Arjun, even if somebody's perfected soul, don't think that just because you're perfected, तेरे को duty नहीं है. You have to do everything, right? If you see 3.18, 3.19 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very clearly says, even the self-realized soul has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his duties, but still he does it, right? He does it. Krishna is saying that. So basically, Arjuna is trying to become redundant. He's trying to escape from his duties, but Krishna is not permitting that, right? Krishna is not permitting that. And that's why if you see in the slide, I've put the picture, this painting of Priyavrat, right? It's a very interesting story in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, where Priyavrat is being trained by Narada Muni in renunciation. And our Swayambhuva Manu, one of his lineage is over, like that from Uttanapad till Prachetas. One lineage is actually terminated. And Swayambhuva Manu is anxious to have the next king. So then he goes to Priyavrat and tells him that come and become king. But Priyavrat says that, Are, will I not get caught up in the duties of the world? And Narada Muni is standing next to Priyavrat and Narada Muni is kind of quiet. So Swayambhuva Manu understands that I can't convince my son so easily because his guru has done some strong preaching. So at that point of time, we know in the story how Lord Brahma arrives. And Lord Brahma comes and Lord Brahma very clearly tells Priyavrat that, my dear Priyavrat, all of us are like bull, which is controlled by the rope through our nose. And that rope is Varnashram. And Brahmaji says that the rules of Varnashram are binding on all and you have to do your duties in the world. And don't worry, you will not get bound up or anything. In fact, you will come out stronger. He gives him an assurance. But the point is, just because he is a self-realized soul, Priyavrat, it is not that he is he is exempted from everything. नहीं वैसा नहीं, किधर भी नहीं शास्त्र में. Correct. So what you see in Shastra is that sometimes somebody is so absorbed in devotional love that they don't understand what is happening to their body, right? Just like we see Mahaprabhu. He's so absorbed, he doesn't care about who is around him. And or when Krishna blows the flute, all the gopis ran from their homes, etc. Kishore? So, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah. So when Lord Chaitanya, when he was absorbed, or when the gopis are very much absorbed, when Krishna blows his flute, they all run away from their homes, they give up their duties. But we see this happening. When do we see this happening? We see this happening when they are kind of helplessly attracted by Krishna. It was not artificial. There was no artificiality in that. Correct. But when somebody like us, if we try to do that, it's very artificial. Correct. So, for example, some pure devotee of the Lord, he may be, even in an eclipse, he may be, he may not be kind of consciously following the rules of the eclipse because he's so absorbed in love of God. He may be just chanting and dancing on the road. He is not even aware that the eclipse is there. But someone ordinary is not at that level. So he can't say that these rules don't apply to me. And that's not what the Bhagavad Gita is saying very clearly. Okay. So why I'm saying this is also because there was another case that had come up. In fact, there was one devotee who's, I had a kind of, I was speaking to someone who's kind of very senior in terms of his position, is saffron and kind of a leader in a temple, and he very well knows the deity worship ministry, etc. So we were having a chat on one topic, that if someone's father dies, some pujari's father dies, then does he have to obey the rules of Shastra? Like 13 days there is asauchana, or is it that he directly goes to altar? So this devotee whom I was talking to, he was saying that, no, for devotees, all these rules are not important. Even if someone's father is dead, he does the cremation, comes, takes bath, and he can immediately go into the altar. So, he was saying that this is the official position of us, and this is how we view this whole thing. And he was giving examples of so many of our contemporary devotees whose father died and they just did the Antya Sanskar, took bath, and immediately went to the altar. So when I was talking to him, I was feeling that no, see, so basically, how is this possible? Because when the Shastra talks about a duty that 13 days you follow the mourning period, that is there for everybody. Correct? The Shastra has no Shastra has said that Vaishnava matlab tumko ye karna nahi hai. Because the idea is that someone who was very close to you, like your father or mother died, then at least take 10-12 days to think about them. Right? So I had heard about this, that when Radhanath Maharaj's mother died, passed away, it was in 2005 or 6. It seems she passed away one day before Maharaj's Vyas Puja, or maybe on the day of Maharaj's Vyas Puja, when the celebration was there. Un dino celebration hota tha, Vyas Puja ka. So that time Maharaj's mother died. So it seems Maharaj's father also was aware that his Vyas Puja is there. So he had told the devotees, whomever, Srinathji Prabhu or someone, that don't tell Maharaj until the event is over. Because that day the event was there, and obviously if you tell Maharaj that his mother has passed away, then he may find it very difficult to focus on sitting and having a Vyas Puja. So it seems they did not tell him that day, but after the function is over, they told him. Then it seems Maharaj, the next day he went to the airport, and all the devotees were there with him. So Maharaj told them that now I'm going, so I can focus on what my mother did for me, and I can spend time mourning. Mourning means remembering her, right? So basically, this is a very important part of the tradition, that you, for 13 days, you mourn. But again, at the 13th day, what we do, if you see in our Vedic culture, it is amazing, right? In every caste, you see this, that on the 13th day, there is a feast served. And even if somebody whose husband died, on the 13th day, she is also given sweet to eat. Because the idea is that there is a time for mourning and there is a limitation for mourning also. Mourning khatam ho gaya, so life has to move on. Not that whole life you are mourning for whoever passed away. But basically, for someone to say that I don't care, or just because of Vaishnava I am exempt, just does not happen. This is not Shastra. Correct. So basically, so just like there is Nitya Karma, there is Naimittika Karma. Nitya Karma means har din jo karte hain hum log, like jap karte hain, har din kirtan karte hain. Ye Nitya Karma hua. Naimittika Karma means once a while, like Upanayan Sanskar, Vivaha Sanskar, or these all these things like what shall I say, eclipse, etc., or someone died at home. Then what rules one follows, all this becomes Naimittika Karma, or occasionally following this. So the whole idea is from Bhagavad Gita. If you see 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is very clear. Even if somebody is self-realized, Krishna has said, he has to follow all the rules and regulations laid out in the Shastra. And the Shastra does not give any such concession for someone who's having the disposition of Vaishnava. अब वैष्णव रहोगे आपके चेतना में, लेकिन तब भी आपको वर्णाश्रम के हिसाब से you have to follow. It is very clear. Correct. So this is again another important learning from the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So now we will take the last point. So I'm just wondering what should I do, because I have another point. Okay, because the next point actually is a very, it would take a lot of time to talk on it. So maybe I'll just stop here, take questions, and maybe I will, or maybe anyway, I'll just cover this point up. Okay, so it'll take another 10 minutes. So I think it should be okay, because we meet once in 2 weeks. I'll just take another 10 minutes and wrap up the final 10 to 12 minutes and wrap up this point. And then we would take questions. Okay, so the last point that I wish to make today is about what Krishna is speaking in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th chapter Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is talking about this journey of life, as I have put up on the screen. Krishna is talking very clearly about the journey of life from karma to nishkama karma to niskinchana bhakti. And if you see the verses of Gita, they're so beautiful, where Krishna is talking about this journey. So why I'm saying this is because many times, we hear from, like, I'm sure that when all of us have met common people, And if someone, is a common man who says that he's reading Bhagavad Gita or is a student of Bhagavad Gita, then he always says that Gita means do your duty, right? Many people in the world who have read Bhagavad Gita, or normal Hindus in India, their understanding of Bhagavad Gita is Gita means do your duty. And surprisingly, and sometimes we feel that, oh, they have just not understood Bhagavad Gita. So it's not that they have not understood Bhagavad Gita, because Gita does talk about doing duty, correct? And there are many verses that talk about it, and let's go through some of them. So if you see the second chapter, 32nd verse of Bhagavad Gita, look at what Krishna is saying. Yadrichaya chopapannam swarga dwaram apavritam sukina kshatriya partha labante yuddha midrisham. Krishna is saying that, oh Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of heavenly planets. Here, if you see in this verse, Krishna is purely talking from the point of view of tendency or disposition. Krishna is not even talking in these verses about doing swadharma for establishing dharma, or doing swadharma out of love for Krishna. All that will come later. But currently, Krishna is simply talking about doing one's dharma because it is one's dharma. Krishna is saying that those who are Kshatriyas are very happy when they get fighting opportunities, because it opens the door of heaven for them. Means Krishna wants to say that they just get opportunities to go ahead in life. Either they will become the king in the world, or they will die and they will go to the heavens and they will be happy. Right? So this aspect of just doing the duty is spoken about in Gita, because simply by doing one's duty also one progresses. Right? So there is one article of Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he talks about consciousness. He says that how there are different levels of consciousness, and then he talks about how he met one sculpture. Somebody was making sculptures and deities, etc. And this person, it seems, spoke to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and told him the difference between a living stone and a dead stone. So perhaps all of you may have heard that in our Shastra, when deities are carved, they are made from a living stone. Abhi, a living stone kya hota hai? So those of us who don't know anything about it, we don't know anything. Now this person who was a sculptor, he was not even he was not someone who had read scriptures or anything. But just by doing his duty, he had accumulated so much of knowledge, and he was able to tell someone like Bhaktivinoda Thakur about what is the difference between a living and a dead stone. Right? So Krishna is talking about this in Gita 2.32, that just by doing one's duty also, one, benefits. But Krishna is not stopping there. Krishna is not saying that duty is the end of everything. If you see 2.37 Bhagavad Gita, again, very beautiful. 2.37 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, Hatova prapsasi swargam jitva va bokshase mahim. So Krishna is here, is saying that he's talking about doing duty. Either you will be killed or you will enjoy the earthly kingdom. Either you will be killed and attain heaven, or you will enjoy the earthly kingdom. So here also, if you see carefully, Krishna is not talking in terms of doing duty for Krishna and so on. Krishna is simply saying that without bothering too much about result, if you simply do duty, then so much you benefit. And that comes very nicely in 2.38 Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is saying, Sukha dukkhe samay kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yudhaya yujasva nevam papam avapsyasi. Please look at that word. So if you remember, last time I mentioned this, that we need to read the Sanskrit words very carefully to see how Krishna is saying things. Right? So Krishna is saying in 2.38, Sukha dukkha samay kritva labha labho jaya jayo. Do duty without bothering about the result. So here Krishna is talking about nishkama karma. Again, please note, here Krishna is not even saying that do nishkama karma yoga. Yoga means connected to Krishna. Krishna wo bhi nahi bol rahe. Krishna is simply saying, please see 2.38. Krishna is not talking about karma yoga, where one has to connect it to Krishna. Krishna is simply saying that just by doing one's duty without bothering about the result, one doesn't accumulate sin. Can you imagine that? Nevam papam avapsyasi. Aapko paap nahi lagta. Right? So just like you see in India, this has been a very common platform of action for many people, where people just did their duty because it was their duty to do. Taking care of their younger sisters, younger brothers, taking care of their parents. Kyun kiya? Duty hai, isliye kiya bas. without bothering about whether they are happy or they are sad in it. And Krishna is glorifying that in 2.38. In fact, Krishna is not just glorifying, Krishna is saying that such people don't accumulate papa. मतलब उनको पाप नहीं लगता. Right? So Krishna is saying that they are free from sin. Right? Now if you go further in Bhagavad Gita, there is this, I'm going to the 5th chapter, text number 11. If you see 5th chapter, text number 11, Krishna is saying, Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indirairapi yogina karma kuruvanti sangam tyaktvatma shuddhaye. Please look at that Sanskrit there. Very amazing. Krishna is saying the yogi abandoning attachment. Right? So we are continuing from the previous theme. That means someone who has performed his Nishkama Karma Yoga without attachment, and he's acting, he's acting with body, mind and intelligence. Krishna is saying, Kevala Indriya Rapi, even with his senses. Usko kya hota hai? Sangam tyakt atma shuddha. Atma shuddha matlab uska atma ka shuddhikaran ho jata hai. Can you imagine? So here also Krishna has not brought himself. Krishna has said that he's a yogi, so he may be any kind of yogi. He may be a jnani or whatever. He may have understanding of impersonal absolute truth. So you just see the levels, right? So in 2.32, Krishna is talking about simply doing duty. Then in 2.37, he is saying that either you will die or you will enjoy, no problem. And 2.38 is saying that don't bother about anything. That means he's talking about Nishkama Karma. And then he's saying that all your sins will be purified. Now in 5.11, he's saying that if such a person at least connects himself to some kind of yoga, he purifies his soul. So now he's going even further. He purifies his soul. And then finally in 5.12, he's saying Yukta Karma Phalak Tyaktva Shantim Apnoti Naiskiriyam Ayukta Karma Karena Phale Shakto Nibandhate. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. Now Krishna has got himself into the picture. So then this has become bhakti now. Correct? So now Krishna is saying that such a yogi who offers his results to me. Offers results means what? It's basically a disposition again, as I told. That means who's doing everything like a normal person only. But as he's doing everything, he's thinking that I am doing this for the pleasure of Krishna. Krishnarpanam. Right? So I'm cooking, I'm earning money, I'm maintaining my family, I'm right. So it's not that something separately he has to do. So whatever he's doing that only. But internally he has understood that sab kuch Bhagwan ke charanon mein main arpan karta hu. As a consciousness. That means from his Chetana perspective, he is thinking that I am, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, Manasa deha geha joki chumor arpilo tuva pade nanda kishore. It's a platform of consciousness. So one is thinking internally that jo bhi main kar raha hu, ye sab Bhagwan aapke charanon mein. Right. So if somebody does that, then then that actually becomes bhakti now. And Krishna is saying such a person attains me. Correct. So basically, if you see this, it's so beautiful. This whole journey, if you see this whole journey that Krishna is talking about, from a person who is just doing duty, someone's mic is on. Vaibhav Sharma's mic is, yeah. Someone who is just doing his duty, to someone who progresses to Nishkama Karma, someone who becomes a Nishkama Karma yogi, and finally someone who becomes a Akinchana Bhakta. And the beauty is you actually become an Akinchana Bhakta in this particular journey. Right? So if somebye says that ye main kuch nahi karunga, directly Nishkinchana Bhakta. Right? So I've written also on the slide, there is this journey of progressing from karma to Nishkama Karma. Actually, there is one more step, Nishkama Karma Yoga to Nishkinchana Bhakti. Ye jo 4 step hai, which we just discussed from Bhagavad Gita, 2.32, 2.38, 5.11, 5.12. Right? If you see this journey, this is the journey which Krishna talks about as Karma Yoga. And no one can say that this journey is not important for me, or that this journey. So actually, another one thing I want to say here, that sometimes, we talk about Swadharma, Swarup Dharma, or, we talk about this is for the body, this is for the soul, etc. But if you see in Gita, it's not even separated so much. What you are doing for the body itself becomes an act of your purification. मतलब वो कनेक्शन है उसमें. If you see 5.11 as I read, कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति संगम त्यक्त्वात्म शुद्धये. That person is doing everything which is body only, and with his body what he is doing, not that he is going to a temple and he is sitting there. He may be sitting in his home, he is just taking care of his family, he is doing all the normal things what everyone else does, but he is doing without attachment. And because he is a yogi, he has become purified. So this is how Krishna presents in Bhagavad Gita very clearly. So the point is, so why I'm saying this is because even there are many normal people in India, ordinary people in India, who have till this day done their duty just because it is their duty. So many people we have seen in our families and extended relatives, etc. We have seen people just because they had to do, they have done it. And Krishna appreciates that. Krishna says, if such a person if such a person did not ask the question, मैंने ये सब क्यों किया? You know, so suppose, unfortunately, sometimes it happens with some people that they do everything right, but at the end they ask, अरे मैंने इतना कुछ किया जीवन में सबके लिए किया लेकिन मुझे कुछ नहीं मिला. So once you say that, then you are finished. You know, then you are not in Nishkama Karma platform. आप नीचे आ गए. But if simply you did that duty in a Nishkama platform, Krishna very clearly says that such a person obtains divyatva. That means he obtains transcendence. And this is the principle of karma philosophy that Krishna is talking in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. We're basically saying, keep doing your duty since you cannot avoid it. And slowly by buddhi, you do it without attachment. And when you connect it to Krishna finally, then that becomes Nishkinchana Bhakti and everything is favorable. Right? So I think with that, we would stop. We would take some questions. Meanwhile, I just wanted to just in a minute, we'll just summarize all the points that we saw today. 1 second. Yeah, so these were the 4 things that we discussed today, what I have put on the slide here. So please have a look. Right, so the first question that we saw was, 1 second, let me just, yeah, the first thing we saw that how to deal with your superiors when they make mistakes. So we started our discussion today from Bhagavad Gita 1.36, where Arjuna, he is feeling that arey ye log mere superior hai. And in 2.4, 2.5 Bhagavad Gita also, Arjuna is very clearly saying that ye log sab mere superior hai. How can I, you know, question their mistakes? I can't do that, and he feels like that. But of course, Krishna corrects him. So I also spoke about Yudhishthir. So I spoke about how there is this difference between respecting the position of somebody and analyzing their mistakes. And even if they are a superior, it is not that superior means they can do anything and they are not questioned at all. So I think we discussed that, and we also discussed what is Vaishnava Aparad. I said that Vaishnava Aparad basically means that when we question their intention without knowing their intention, or when we talk about an action that they never did, like somebody says that Prabhupada was poisoned, so that is absolute aparad because that event never happened. So basically you're talking some nonsense. So then that becomes an offense. But otherwise, just questioning action is not offense. So one has to understand that. Right. And then we also discussed about how Vaishnavas are not exempt from anything from the Shastra. Right. So we discussed from 3rd chapter Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is very clearly saying that even if you're self-realized, you have to do everything that a common person is doing. It's not that just because you're a... So I also discussed how Vaishnava is a disposition. It is not a position. There is no special exemptions given to Vaishnavas anywhere. And then finally, we spoke about the journey that Krishna talks about in Gita, first 6 chapters, from karma to Nishkama Karma, to Nishkama Karma Yoga, to Nishkinchana Bhakti, as a very natural progression, which is mandatory for everybody, and nobody can think that, because you can't go into Nishkinchana Bhakti, because Nishkama Karma Yoga teaches you that detachment. Otherwise, even in Bhakti, one may be thinking that, अरे इतना साल माला किया लेकिन मेरे को कोई taste ही नहीं है माला करने में. So that you cannot ask that question, because you have to also learn to understand, to do things as a matter of duty. We are doing mala because our guru has told us to do mala. That's it. Right. So whether I get taste or I don't get taste, I don't care. I have to do my duty, and that's it. So this is possible only if on a routine way one is practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll just take some questions. I think Gaurav Prabhu had a question. He was the first one to raise the hand. I think his hand is not there now, or he has left. I don't know. Is he there?
I'm there, Prabhuji. I'm there.
Yeah, you had raised your hand first. Yeah, you had a question? Yeah,
yes.
please. Go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, actually, I've got 3 questions. So first one is that we spoke about the mistakes of the seniors. Now, understand, that now see, in practical scenarios, suppose somebody brings to us some quote from Prabhupada, that the Prabhupada said so and so thing, this is your spiritual master who talks about so and so things about blacks, for example, or any other controversial statement. Now, what should be our response to such kind of situations? Do we say no, that was casual thing, just downplay it, or we say no, actually this was wrong, or we start justifying that? So what do we do in such situations?
Yeah, I understood. I understood the question. So first thing, Prabhuji, we should educate our own people to understand what to quote and what not to quote. I mainly spoke about that Prabhupada anecdotes in order to say that I quoted Maharaj also, if you remember. Radhanath Maharaj, it seems Govind Prabhu was telling us that Radhanath Maharaj told Govind Prabhu, it seems, that these 37 volumes of conversations he told Govind Prabhu are not to be read only. He said, because the thing is, they're very casual conversations. Come on, see the problem with the Westerners sometimes is that har ek cheez ko unhone document karke rakh diya. It's actually a little dangerous also. You can't do that. So in a casual conversation, everybody makes casual remarks, and that's normal. And you will have to understand a person very holistically to understand his views on anything. Otherwise, you simply doubt his intent. In ISKCON,
we are losing you. We can't hear you.
Or who are just academic scholars in the Western world, but they knew about Prabhupada conversations because everything is printed. And they unfortunately quoted many of these things about blacks, and they wrote articles. I think it's in one sense, it's very clearly not necessary on our part to have made every conversation like that public. It doesn't make any sense actually. We may think that we are helping, but I really feel so I think currently at least what can be done is, whoever our preachers are, they have to be counseled. I remember you had sent me that, Gaurav Prabhu, you had sent me that this thing where one Delhi temple, one press summit.
Prabhuji, well, we cannot hear you. Can others hear you?
Brahmachari is talking a lecture where he's saying on as a matlab abhi Prabhupada pata nahi, I don't. Haribol?
Prabhuji, we are losing you.
Prabhu, we can't hear you. Your mic is showing us gray. It's not green.
I think Krishna Kishore Prabhu's internet is not.
Haribol? Yeah, so that lecture, that person says that these are conversations, and conversations are mistake on our people only to quote such. Because when normal people fail to understand and they conclude something wrong.
We again lost you.
And unnecessarily you're helping people off that. It is not to be quoted to do it. Make sense, Gaurav Prabhu? You should avoid. See, conversations are very, very private. हर एक चीज को रिकॉर्ड करके ऐसा पब्लिक में बोलना मतलब you're unnecessarily causing people to question intentions of your guru which he never had. So basically, right, na? Yeah.
Prabhuji, please repeat the Delhi example what you gave. We are not able to hear you. Delhi example you have given something.
So one second. One person at a time. Gaurav Prabhu, please say, what were you saying?
So Prabhuji, that is clear that we should avoid making such controversial statements in public. But now, if that is done, the question is, if it is done and somebody presents this to you, then what do you do? As part of ISKCON, how do you react?
Okay. Yeah, I got it. So what we can do is, we can tell them that, you see, you can tell them how Prabhupada actually never had anything like this against the blacks. See, Prabhupada was the only person, who initiated so many blacks, made them Brahmins, gave them sannyas, right? He never distinguished between whether you are an Indian, American,
a white or a black in terms of, the facility for your own spiritual advancement. In fact, Prabhupada, when he went to South Africa, that was the time of apartheid. Prabhupada's lecture was on the topic, what is this nonsense black and white business? This is all bodily consciousness. He spelled lecture there in South Africa in 1970s, which was actually quite, challenging, because in those times in South Africa, people were not ready to hear such a thing, right? Because all this apartheid and all was in full flow. So I'm just saying that you have to present perhaps a more complete side of Prabhupada and hope that they accept it. But I think generally it's a fault of our preachers to bring out such points in public, which they shouldn't. Okay?
No, I agree with you. And maybe I'll send you some screenshots of actually what I responded.
Yeah, I understood what you're saying. I have seen many of these in public domain. Too many of it. Kitne sare logon ne yahi na. That's why I told you, conversations na. See, these conversations are very light moments where you're talking with somebody something. हर एक चीज को ऐसा ये करके डालना मतलब बहुत ही खतरनाक चीज है.
Right.
Are you getting it?
Second question, that regarding this duty that one who follows his duty, Krishna appreciates that. So the question here is that Krishna appreciates, but what will be the gati of such a person who is following his duties, but he need not be, say, chanting, for example? Okay.
Oh yeah, so it's very clear, na? In the Bhagavad Gita it is very clear. So if you remember, I told you there is karma, there is nishkama karma, there is nishkama karma yoga, and there is nishkinchana bhakti. Nishkama karma, if somebody does duty and doesn't expect anything, nishkama karma matlab tum karma karte ho lekin phal ki apeksha nahi karte ho, you are purified from all sins. Krishna is saying in 2.38, please read. Sukha dukkha same kritva labha labha jaya jayo tasmad yuddha yujasva nevam papam avapsyasi. Aapko paap nahi lagta. Are you understanding it? Krishna is very clearly saying, Krishna there is not talking about somebody who is chanting and doing everything. That is a bhakta, right? Krishna is just talking about somebody who is a nishkama karmi. He is not even a yogi. Even such a person, he is freed from sinful reactions. मतलब वो आगे जाएगा ना, heavenly planets जाएगा, यहाँ जाएगा, वहाँ जाएगा.
Correct.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
The question is, so agree. So agree that he doesn't get sin, but the question is that is following your duty, is it a replacement for chanting? Essentially, he can go to higher planets. He can go to a aristocratic family. He can go to take birth in a family of devotees. That all can be done. But is it can if somebody says that if you follow your karma without any attachment, then you will attain the highest destination. You will go back to God. Can that be said?
ऐसा नहीं हो सकता ना. ऐसा भगवान ने बताया नहीं है. If you want to go back to Godhead, you have to love Krishna. So that is very clear, na? You can go to heavenly planet. You can be happy there. So it's a journey. So chanting is not having any competition with all this, right? So chanting and devotional activity is very clearly to develop a love for God. अगर आपको भगवान के प्रति प्रेम नहीं है, see the beauty of Krishna is in Bhagavad Gita, he has made it so all accommodative. Even if somebody doesn't want to love him, Bhagavad Gita is talking so many things for such a person. And that is why many common people in India also talk about Bhagavad Gita without talking about bhakti. Because Krishna is talking about it. Not as the ultimate thing, but Krishna is talking about it as a journey. And that is accepted in Bhagavad Gita. Correct? That is spoken. That is not an alternative to Bhakti Yoga.
Okay.
Yeah.
So similarly, somebody who's like a following Jnana Yoga, he's reading scriptures, he's getting scholarly kind of person. Can we say that such a person will probably advance, and maybe in due course of time he may start appreciating and loving God also, but not necessarily that this is on the same platform as somebody who's performing devotional service. Is it the right understanding?
Yeah, certainly. Jnani is so even appreciated even more. If you see Jnani, I have not spoken about it. We'll speak about it maybe in another session. The 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, if you see, Krishna appreciates Jnani like anything. And he will achieve so many things. He will achieve perhaps the Brahman platform. He will achieve so many things in life. He will not go back to Krishna because he himself doesn't want to. So why should Krishna give him that facility? उसको जाना नहीं है Krishna के पास. उसको maximum Brahma Jyoti में जाएगा बस. But Krishna has spoken about that. Yeah.
So, last question, very short one. This eclipses that we talk about, solar and lunar eclipse. So, what is your understanding? Are they auspicious? Are they not auspicious?
No, generally it is considered an inauspicious time. Inauspicious as in it is a time when the heavenly powers like Surya Dev, Chandra Dev are affected. And if someone of the caliber of Surya Chandra are affected, then what to speak of normal people? So the idea is that when the devatas get affected, everybody in the Prithvi gets affected. So that is why at that time one does spiritual activity to protect one's consciousness so that one doesn't get affected. Correct. So that is the reason why people chant the name of God, people do spiritual activity and all that. Correct. And then after the eclipse is over, because the contamination period is over, it is just like the contamination, like like somebody has if you sleep at night, it's contamination, na? So morning you take a bath, then the contamination is cleansed. So similarly, after the eclipse, since that contamination was there, now you take a bath and you are freed from the contamination. That's the idea. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Guruji.
Yeah, Haribol. Yeah, Roop Gaur Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, very much. Please go ahead.
Prabhuji, regarding this leaders committing, some questionable actions. Now, sometimes it may happen that the leader commits action which is sort of, how to say, which creates a problem for the leader himself. And then there are three types of, reactions normally we see. One type of reaction, some people say, अरे क्यों किया था उसने, किसने बोला था उसको ऐसा करने के लिए? Why did he do like that in the first place? Doesn't he understand the, what is going on and what the, about the principles of working in the world?
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
One reaction. Second reaction is the another person may say that he's so compassionate. He was so compassionate for the mission and he took that risk, risking himself, risking his own. That is another thing some people think. And the third reaction is that some devotees say that ultimately he did everything for Krishna and he's on such a high platform. I mean, he's a pure devotee, and ultimately it's all the will of Krishna, or ultimately Krishna is in charge of it. So everything is in Krishna. So how do we I mean, this is very, very confusing.
I got it. Yeah. No, Prabhuji, see, one thing is very clear. If a leader does some mistake which has affected other people, then I think no matter who the leader is, he has to be questioned. But if he does something where only he has got affected, then that's a personal choice also. Are you getting it? So basically, right, simple example, now this corona thing is there. So just like I'll tell you, in London, when Shruti Dharma Prabhu passed away, there was a memorial service and many devotees came for the memorial service. And many people got corona in that memorial service and devotees passed away also. Are you getting it? If you read it, I have read about it. वो memorial service March में था, mid-March में, and many devotees who attended that memorial service, they got corona and 2-3 of them, they died also in that. So see, now the point is, so see, one thing is very clear. We have been repeatedly saying, Krishna's laws are for everybody. आप डिवोटी हो, सन्यासी हो, आप नॉर्मल आदमी हो, जो भी हो, अभी कोरोना है तो प्रकृति का है ना खेल, तो भक्त को ऐसा नहीं होगा. I mean, like I was talking about Bhakti Charu Maharaj, right? So somebody does Pada Puja for Maharaj, if he has corona, then he will give corona to his guru. ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम पाद पूजा कर रहे हो इसलिए कोरोना जाएगा नहीं तुम्हारे गुरु को. You're a doctor, right? You understand what I'm saying? So basically, see, Prakriti will always act. Okay. Now the thing is, if somebody has done something where only he has got harmed, then that's a different thing, because then that's his personal choice. That need not be questioned too much. But if somebody has done something where he has caused damage to too many people, then such a person should be questioned. So just like suppose if I am sick in today's time and I am having a fever and there is a suspicion, I am showing some symptoms of corona. If I go to some marriage or a public place and meet 20 people and give corona to 20 devotees, then I am at fault, right? Then I have to be questioned. I say, क्यों किया तुमने? तुमको मालूम था तू बीमार है तो चुपचाप घर में बैठने का ना. पूरा दुनिया self isolation और social distancing का बात कर रहा है. Why did you come to a public place? Are you getting it? So if I harm somebody, then I should be questioned. But if I have harmed myself only, then I think it's a personal choice also in some way, because it's up to an individual how much you want to follow rules of Prakriti and be careful. If I don't want to be too careful and I am okay with some harm coming to my body, it's, I think, my personal choice. So I think we leave it at that. Is that okay? Make sense?
Yeah, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more thing is that.
Yeah, but it is very clear. If a leader, even if he's a leader, if he has done an action because of which many people have got affected, फिर पूछना चाहिए question. Of course, we may not be able to ask because we may be junior, but the right person should ask. किसी को तो पूछना ही चाहिए उनको. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है कि आप सीनियर हो, आप कुछ भी करोगे और you know public का बैंड बज रहा है और you know just because you are senior you are continuing. That is what Bhagavad Gita is condemning. ये भीष्म द्रोण ये लोग सब सीनियर थे ना, बहुत सीनियर थे, बट युधिष्ठिर एंड कृष्णा आर वेरी क्लियर, हो सीनियर हो जूनियर हो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता, तुम गलती किया तो तुमको क्वेश्चन करेंगे हम लोग क्यों किया ऐसा. आर यू गेटिंग इट?
Yeah, but Prabhuji, we also see now we see this ये भीष्म और द्रोण जैसे examples we see that they were you know yeah, many devotees we see breaking the rules. I mean they are not above the material world in worldly actions. कई बार हम ये we see like, but we also see in Bhagavatam there are examples where the devotees, you know, Krishna personally intervenes in their lives and you know he actually nullifies the actions of Prakriti. जैसे example Ambarish Maharaj की कहते हैं, he was about to die but Krishna you know he intervened. Prahlad Maharaj, he was thrown from ऊपर से नीचे फेंका, सब कुछ किया हाथी से भी, but nothing happened to him. So we see such examples also where devotees.
Yeah, but we see also examples where Krishna didn't come to protect, right? Like Abhimanyu was dying and Krishna didn't do anything about it.
Yes, we see those examples. So how do we you know how do we understand कि Krishna is
yeah,
coming
so
for
Prabhuji,
one...
see, generally speaking, ये जो Krishna coming and doing, I think we discussed this once. This is something very rare actually. It is not something that always happens, or if it happens only then Krishna loves the devotee. Generally speaking, Krishna's Prakriti rules only work in the world. तुम गलती करोगे तो उसका सजा मिलेगा, बस that's it. So basically that's the general principle, right? Krishna coming and out of his way doing and interfering in Prakriti happens only when there is avatar in this world. When there is an avatar tattva, na? When Krishna comes as an avatar, then he may do something like that. But otherwise, generally, there is nothing like that Krishna keeps interfering in Prakriti. He allows it to function. So I think that we have to understand that. हमने discuss किया ये point, right?
Yeah, I got it. Prabhuji, one last thing, one last small thing. आपने ये चार चीजें बताई. You told about karma, nishkam karma, and nishkam karma yoga and nishkinchan bhakti. Now we see in our life, we actually, while functioning in this world, we are doing you know a bit of everything. In our duties, like I am doing karma, correct. I need my money from my work. Then nishkam karma, you see, regarding you told about your duty in the family and nishkinchan. So all these four, we are doing a bit of it. So what is our you know, what is our gati?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So basically our duty, I think, is to keep refining it, na, more and more. मतलब वही चीज को और अच्छे से करना. Just like if you see Hindustani classical music, if you see, वही राग वो लोग वापस गाते रहते हैं. आपने देखा है कभी? If you have gone to a musical performance, they will take one rag. Initially वो उतना अच्छा नहीं रहेगा, मतलब 1 घंटे में वही राग बजाते रहेंगे वो लोग, लेकिन हर टाइम उसमें थोड़ा और एक embellishment आएगा. It will be better than before. And finally, at the end of 1 hour, there is a crescendo where the rag is sung with all its glory. So similarly in our life, as you're saying, we are doing a bit of everything, but our duty in life is to keep refining. That means with our children, see, what is Nishkama Karma Yoga with your children? So basically Nishkama Karma Yoga means you don't expect your children are going to do something for you. That is a simple Nishkama Karma Yoga in relationship. Relationship में expectation नहीं है. तो धीरे से we incorporate, we kind of fine tune our own practice with life, so that by the end of your life, it is all very good. That's it. Yeah.
So karma, we need to, this karma means, I mean, this not nishkam, sakam karma. By the end of life, we should be in a position that this sakam karma is totally eliminated, or is there something different?
Yeah, obviously sakama karma means, the idea that I do things only for result. You know, see, that result will be a part of it. So it's not that result will never be a part of it, but doing it, like you're a doctor, so doing it just for the money, आप समझ गए ना, वो थोड़ा सकम हो जाएगा. Only primarily with only that as the goal. But I think with time, it will automatically get refined, where one is doing just because it's one duty to do, and money comes. So please remember, it is not that a Nishkama Karma Yogi ko paisa nahi aayega. Paisa aayega. But he has not kept that as the foremost goal of his life. That's just a side thing.
I
Yeah, Haribol. Harsha Lalita
Thank you.
Mataji, you had a question? Yeah, Haribol.
Yes,
Harsha
Prabhuji.
Lalita
Hare-
Mataji, you have a question? Yeah, Haribol.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you kept on saying couple of times that in an organization like ISKCON, leaders do give preference to the people who render voluminous services. So because organization has to run on. And when
Yeah.
somebody approaches with a repeated problem to the authority, who is like a temple president or vice president, whoever it may be, so because on the basis of, we don't know actually what are their intentions, but when they keep on like taking the biased decisions repeatedly again and again, because that we are tolerating, and we will definitely not say anything else like that, and then giving preference to the people who are committing mistakes but at the same time doing voluminous services. So is it not that this kind of actions of leaders make the faith of the ordinary people collapse? And of course, we do have the leaders who are really act like responsible leaders. So because of which our faith may not collapse. But another part of my question is that, so can we withdraw from such kind of leaders like that regarding our services? Of course, because they have committed 2 or 3 times big mistakes, which have affected us very badly. It doesn't mean that they are totally wrong. We have respect towards such leaders also. We can't consider that they are like this only. But can we withdraw ourselves from such leaders from the service? Because like now, Govind Prabhuji always says that if once the person has anything wrong done to you, whether it is exploitation or cheating or whatever it may be, then that is okay. But when you allow the second time and third time, then it is your mistake. So what's your comment on this, Prabhuji?
Yeah, Mataji. See, one thing is, organization always primarily, in general, organization में जो efficient आदमी है ना, जो contributor है, उसका महत्व हमेशा रहता है. I mean, this is always going to be there. So please try to understand that. Somebody who is contributing in an organization, he is always respected, even if he does a mistake. Like simple example I'll give you, in Bhagavatam also, you see so many times Indra commits mistakes, right? Even when Indra commits mistakes, finally Krishna puts him in that same position. Krishna doesn't remove him from Indra's post. कितना गलती कहते हैं, कृष्णा उसको वहीं रखते हैं ना. So why does he do that? क्योंकि वो काम करते हैं ना कृष्ण के लिए. कृष्ण का मैनेजमेंट देख रहे हो यूनिवर्स में. काम का आदमी है वो, उसको निकाल नहीं सकते.
Yeah, it's not the question of even punishing or removing like that.
Yeah.
But they have to be questioned at least.
Yeah, that is there. That is there.
When
So
their actions are affecting other people. We generally, when we understood the purpose of the mission, we can't even expect that the person has to be punished or removed from the services and all these things. But that person has to be questioned at least minimum from the leaders.
Yeah. That part I agree. That part I agree. Yeah. He has to be questioned. No, there's no question about it. What you're saying is correct. So we generally ensure that. It may take some time sometimes. I understand why you're asking this. But I think we'll ensure that happens, especially in the case that you're talking about. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And another thing. The second part. Withdrawing.
Yeah, the second part, withdrawing. See, basically, I think it's, I mean, I would always say, this withdrawal is something to be the last thing in relationship. Because it's better to deal with the relationship head on. It's better to talk to the person head on and try to resolve it rather than withdraw.
No, withdrawing our services from that particular leader, I'm saying.
Yeah, I understood, but withdrawing
because every time we can't become a victim card, right?
Yeah, I agree. But withdrawal in one sense also in this context. See, if there is no solution, then that is the last solution. What you're saying is the last solution. I would agree with that.
Yeah,
Are
if
you
the
getting what
person
I'm
just
saying?
keeps silent years after years, and we are getting affected again and again.
Agreed. That is the last solution. But preferably we should try to resolve it. So that's what I feel. Yeah, Haribol.
Yes, Prabhuji. Haribol.
Yeah, Smita Nimai Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam. One question only. Prabhuji, that in that deity worship circular, we also saw one line that that we will keep the door closed as per the traditions of Hindus, right?
Yeah.
Hindu and Hindu temples. So why
Yeah.
we are always segregating ourselves from the cultural part of this
Yeah.
whole
So that is why,
civilization?
yeah, yeah. So that is why that whole letter, la Prabhuji.
Yes.
I mean, you'll not believe. I spoke to so many devotees after that letter was issued. There were more people, especially even senior people, who were seriously disturbed with that letter. I mean, I can't even name the number of senior devotees whom I know are much more senior to me, who were very much disturbed with the letter because they felt that ऐसा कैसे तुम लिख सकते हो कि to please the Hindus we should keep it closed. It had such lines, to please the Hindus. Arey, you have come from somewhere else, what? So basically, yeah, that letter unfortunately was. We don't know the intention of whoever wrote it, but the action of that letter was terrible. I mean, we can't agree with that letter any bit. So anyway, one thing good is that is not the official ISKCON position. See, in ISKCON generally what happens is one or two people are heading a department, so they shoot a letter. But the ISKCON official position is yet to come out on this. They're discussing since many years on this thing, what to do about eclipse. And one prime problem which ISKCON is facing is Prabhupada did not speak much about it. And if you remember, I have spoken here many times this. See, the whole idea of Guru Sadhu Shastra is there. Even if your Guru has not spoken something, other Sampradayas have spoken, other Acharyas have spoken. So you can look at that and take inferences. See, when you say that everything you follow or do must have been said by Prabhupada between 1966 and 1977, then it becomes a big challenge. Are you getting it? So, see, Prabhupada had his own goal, which was to establish Krishna consciousness. अभी हर एक चीज के बारे में Prabhupada डिटेल में बोलेंगे ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता, right? But anyway, that is ISKCON's challenge. They will have to find a solution to it. But fortunately, that letter is not the final letter. It's not the final word. So hopefully the final word that comes out will be more moderate.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more point here. Although if no direct inferences, right, to such things, in Krishna book also, we that pastime is there, right? Krishna along with parents goes for that Shivratri, I think, festival where that snake comes and tries to devour
Nanda Baba.
Nanda Baba, right? So all those things are given where the Kul Dharma is kind of followed or culture has been followed. So I'm supporting the points which we have been discussing from the last few weeks, right? So that directly those references are given, and here in our community, some Vaishnav families have also come. So there was lot of to and fro, between that we should do or not do. And since we also took some position on that, then probably we need to have a clear explanation on it, that why we are taking. So my understanding from all these lectures was that we should be following it, and it's not
because
Hindu,
the Shastra
actually,
says so. Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
perfect. The Sanatan Dharma says it, and that's as simple as that.
Yes.
So that's what, Prabhuji. If just because our Guru did not say something, see, that's what. So why Guru Sadhu Shastra is there? Tell me. When you meet such a person, you ask them. We say Guru Sadhu Shastra, na? हम क्यों बोलते हैं गुरु साधु शास्त्र? सिर्फ गुरु 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 बोल सकते थे ना? गुरु 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 बोल सकते थे. Why do we say Guru Sadhu Shastra? Because everything that your Guru says, you have to also look at what other Gurus have said. What Shastra says, आपको देखना पड़ेगा. मध्वाचार्य ने क्या बोला, रामानुजाचार्य ने क्या बोला, शंकराचार्य ने क्या बोला, वो लोग गुरु ही है ना. And what Shastra says, आपको देखना पड़ेगा. आप ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते हो मेरा गुरु मेरा गुरु मेरा गुरु. ऐसा नहीं है ना. So basically the tradition is very clear, Prabhuji. Yeah, Haribol.
Yes, Prabhu. Haribol, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one point more here, Prabhu. It's very difficult to kind of convince people. Like after this recent thing happened, right? Somebody made some comments about ISKCON. After that, people came to know actually ISKCON is following Sanatan Dharma. Otherwise, they have some different perceptions only, right? We at large, right? That they are not Hindus. So So I think that's what I was very surprised, that outside worldview is that they were surprised that ISKCON is following Sanatan Dharma. The people actually perceive it in a very different way, maybe.
Yeah, that is because you have made it like that, as if you are something different. You have come from the sky.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Dinabandhu Chaitanya Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavats. Bataiye.
Prabhuji, just maybe I missed it. Like that example of Prithu Maharaj, which you quoted. So that was in the context of that Vaishnava disposition or position, is it? I didn't get what was the.
Prithu, did I quote Prithu? I think I said.
Oh, sorry, Priyavrat
Which one?
Maharaj. Sorry, Priyavrat Maharaj. Yeah.
Priyavrat I quoted basically to say that if you read the Bhagavatam 5th canto 1st chapter, the discussion is very clear. See, when Priyavrat initially says that I don't want to come and become king, when Swayambhu Manu tells him, so that time Brahmaji comes and says that, Arey, no, everybody has to follow Varnashram Dharma. He tells him like that. Are you getting it? Varnashram Dharma means you have to do your duties as per your situation. You cannot say that I will avoid my duty because I am afraid that I will get entangled. ऐसा तुम बोल ही नहीं सकते. Are you clearly लिखा है उस श्लोक में? If you read 5th canto 1st chapter. So Brahmaji says that all of us have to follow Varnashram rules. We are all like bull controlled by the rope. And the rope is the instructions of Varnashram, which are all instructions of the Supreme Lord. So you have a role in this universe. आपको करना पड़ेगा एक काम. आप नहीं बोल सकते हो कि I am transcendental, I will not do anything. So I spoke that in order to say that Vaishnava is a disposition. It is not a position. That means there is no separate rule for Vaishnava written anywhere. No Shastra says that Vaishnava लोगों के लिए वर्णाश्रम नहीं है, Vaishnava लोगों के लिए eclipse नहीं है, Vaishnava का father मर गया तो भी वो एक दिन में altar में जाके पूजा कर सकते हैं. ऐसा किधर भी लिखा नहीं है. वैष्णव है तो भी तुमको सब follow करना पड़ेगा. Are you getting it? In that context, I said.
Right, true. So, I mean, when you apply this principle which you talked about, that we don't question the action, but we question the intention.
No. Sorry, I didn't say that. I said
sorry.
that you can only question action. Yeah, you can't question intention of a person because you may not know the intention. Are you getting it? You may not know the intention. Yeah.
Yes.
And please note that comes in the Bhagavad Gita itself when Krishna is saying Kim karma kima karmeti. Why is Krishna saying that it is very difficult to understand what is karma, vikarma, akarma? Because intention cannot be understood. इसलिए तुम act तो दिखाई देता है ना. कोई मार रहा है किसी को तो action तो पता है मार रहा है करके. लेकिन intention decide करेगा ना whether that action was correct or no. That is why it is very difficult to say what is karma, what is akarma, what is vikarma. That's the point Krishna says. Yeah, that is why I said you cannot question intention. You can only see the action. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I was hearing one senior Brahmachari's lecture, and he was mentioning that, we have been seeing this spate of changes, right? And I think we have had a lot of discussion on this also. But he was saying, like, when you look at it as something questionable, and we try to maybe control the lives of others, we try to pass judgment. So it's basically a very serious offense. Even when you kind of question the action itself. So so how do you look at this? Because many junior brahmacharis, for that matter, or even grihasthas, they take a lot of inspiration, and then suddenly when there is a change of the ashrama, is it even wrong to for the question to arise in the mind that how did this happen?
Yeah. See, you can question. See, basically, you may question a certain action in terms of, right? So sometimes it may have happened that so that part is fine. So see, there is a limit to it, but see what happens with our people many times is that questioning becomes too much. You question the person's full credibility only. Are you getting it? Like some brahmachari is there, he was preaching to some Mataji, he ends up marrying that Mataji. So you may that particular action or what happened as an external episode, there may have been some discrepancies in it. So that part can be questioned, but you don't question the entire integrity of a person or say that that person was an outright cheat from the beginning. So that's unfortunately what happens with our devotees. So my observation is sometimes so we generally take extreme positions. So sometimes we say that we should not question anything about senior. वो senior है कुछ भी कर रहा है तो भी कुछ भी प्रश्न पूछने का नहीं. And sometimes we question them so much that we literally we murder their whole character only. Are you getting it now? So ऐसा नहीं कर सकते. To some extent, yes, that questioning can be there in terms of the external action, and that can be dealt with, right? But beyond one point, one should not do that. That's the point. Then it actually becomes aparad, because you're questioning the intention of a person where you don't know that he may have never had such an intention. Are you getting it?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, even the questioning has to be, I mean, done probably with the, I mean, in the line of, with some in confidence, right? I mean, not
Yeah,
like public forums, or I mean.
Yeah, certainly not on internet. Yeah.
Sure, Prabhu. And Prabhu, just another point, since you mentioned about that, Pakistan Air Force incident, the flight. I mean, the Asian.
No, I just read an article. I read an article which said it. Which said it that one reason for this accident was the Asian culture of respect. I found that article intriguing because what it said made sense to me, because they have given the whole transcription. Because that black box मिलता है ना, उसमें वो recording है ना उनका पूरा, वो captain क्या बोल रहा है, first officer क्या बोल रहा है, वो air traffic controller क्या बोल रहा है. So that captain was a senior fellow, it seems. He was 30 years experience plus, and the other two fellows were junior. So that fellow did many mistakes, it seems, but these people didn't question him only. मतलब वो senior है बोल के कुछ पूछा ही नहीं उसको, मर गए सब लोग. Yeah.
Right. I mean, even in the Western world, there have been some of the worst air crashes have happened because of the same reason. So probably, of course, the Asian culture is more predominant, kind of psycho. It's a psycho fancy, but then there in the Western culture, I mean, because
possible. Yeah, okay. Maybe it was a Western article, so they criticized the culture. But whatever it is, I found at least those arguments making sense. So it was relevant to my topic, so I just pitched it in.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dinesh, please go ahead. Last question, I guess.
Prabhuji, am I audible?
Yeah, very much. Please go ahead.
I have two questions. The first one is, Prabhuji, that, many times we see one of the, very senior devotees whom we sometimes even consider on the level of pure devotee as well, but their managerial dealings are not favorable or sometimes unjust, Prabhuji. So what the tendency of a normal person like me is to question the whole personality, even including the devotion. So my question is it like devotion and the understanding of the devotions are two different things? Or because
Prabhuji, devotion and managerial skills are two different things. We sometimes we assume that somebody is a pure devotee means he should be excellent manager. ऐसा कहीं भी नहीं है. It is not necessary at all. Somebody may not be a pure devotee. See, please, that's what, na? See, we are confusing two things here. Devotional outlook to life and managerial skills are completely different. Managerial skills are mundane, material. Somebody may have it, somebody may not have it. I have seen many even very senior devotees who may have lot of, I'll give you an example with name. I mean, no offense, but it's kind of, okay, anyway, I'll not name the person. But there is one senior Saffron Brahmachari. He is very well known to be like an Avadut kind of person. So he takes people on yatra and everything. And there is complete mismanagement in whatever happens. But he's actually personally a very advanced person in terms of his, attachment to the holy name and everything. Are you getting it? So to think that just because somebody is attached to the holy name and, he has a lot of love for Krishna Katha, Chaitanya Katha, whatever, to think that because of that he should be a very good manager also, aisa to nahi hota na. So there are so many people who are excellent managers who are not even devotees. I mean, why not? Right? There are so many CEOs, there are so many presidents of countries who are extremely efficient managers, but they are not devotee, not yogi, nothing, because that's just a material skill. It's just a material skill. It is management is just like how somebody may be good with playing cricket. I mean, as in it's nothing to do with your devotion actually. Are you getting it?
Yeah, Prabhuji. And my second question is, Prabhuji, that that you took a topic of devotees not following the all the antim samskar, all the rituals afterwards, and I see even many of the nowadays in my circle as well, Prabhuji, in the name of liberalism, they don't believe. I mean, like I happen to come across few cases where the children, they rejected outrightly, saying that we don't believe in this. So Prabhuji, somewhere the parents, it's even depends upon the samskar also. So the two questions are, do the parents have to, the soul of their parents have to suffer because they are the one, they are the reason for the samskaras, whatever they have it. But at the same time, we also see that many a times children, when they are exposed to the outside world, they go to another extreme. Like you took an example of a person who eat meat, or your Govind Prabhu, like, who was fully vegetarian, but once he went into
Yeah,
army,
yeah,
once he
yeah.
tasted the chicken and again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, see,
So-
basically, see, it's a simple thing. These samskaras have a purpose. It's a simple thing, somebody's father died. Arey, your father gave birth to you. At least take 13 days off from your life to think about him. Na? What is the purpose of that contamination period? Because you're thinking about what your father did for you in separation. And on the 13th day, there is sweets served, everything is served. Because now life has to come back to normal also, na? कोई गया इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि पूरा जिंदगी रोते नहीं बैठोगे, जिंदगी आगे भी जाएगा. But the point is, it's not just about bad karma. It's about that basic element of gratitude. If you couldn't even have gratitude for your father, and how can you say that, I just do my antim samskar of my father and directly I go to the shop, or directly I go and go to the altar and start worshipping? ऐसा नहीं हो सकता ना. So basically, at least that.
But that is on the son's level.
Yeah.
How about the father? How about the deceased person's level? Because does his growth gets hampered or something like that? And many times we hear about the Pitra dosha as well. Like
See,
I heard few
basically,
astrologers-
if somebody has done their duty properly in raising their children well, then nothing attaches to them. There's no dosha on them. See, it depends on how they grew up the children. If they did their duty of giving the right thing to their child, then they are free. Even if this fellow become a rascal later. But if they have not done their duty only raising properly, then yes, then they are also implicated because they didn't do their duty in the first place. So it depends. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, Haribo. Okay, there is another question. I thought this was last. Damodar Ashtakam Prabhu?
Prabhuji, this question is related to solar eclipse or lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
Like a
Go
doubt comes to my mind ki exactly what is the effect. Like it is very subtle. So many times we discuss so many rules and regulations, and we tend to like skip them.
Yeah.
Means exactly we don't take it seriously because we don't see any, like we see Modi also many a times, means we have seen that we should not see the solar eclipse, but his photos are circulated like in with the particular goggle.
Yeah.
He's
See,
looking at
Modi is not our example of how to practice, our daily duties
No,
of
but
japa tapa and all that. Yeah, I agree with the point. See, basically, see, it's about the forces in the universe. Actually, what has happened, I guess, sometimes we say, somebody is wearing a black lungi, and in that lungi, even if 2-3 additional black spots come, he doesn't even understand that it is more black than before, because पहले से इतना काला था, उसको समझता भी नहीं कि अभी और काला किधर हुआ है. So in general, Kali Yuga folks, most of us, there is already so much of challenge in our consciousness and levels. It's already contaminated in so many ways. So perhaps such universal contaminations are not perceivable. So I think I would say that in obedience to the Shastra also we do things. So basically, see, the idea is simple. The Rahu and Ketu are sitting in the ascending and descending node of the moon. And when there is an eclipse, even astronomically, they are there. And so basically it is a time where in the universal forces, the higher powers are what shall I say, overcome by the lower powers. You understood now? So at such times, one doesn't do some activity. So just like we also hear that at sunset, during sunrise or sunset, one shouldn't have union. Na? Matlab wo story hai na, Kashyap Diti ka. They are having union at sunset and Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyakshar born. So nowadays most people may not believe, अरे क्या फर्क पड़ता है, sunset में करेंगे तो क्या फर्क पड़ेगा. Maybe because anyway there are so many demons or so many people with wrong samskaras born that nobody finds a difference of such things. But I would say that by following Shastra carefully, we slowly rise. And I think as a matter of obedience, we do that again as a Nishkama Karma. And we try to better our own consciousness and situation. And it is just another wonderful opportunity for us to engage in Dan Tapa Yagya, right? Because the whole idea of eclipse is during eclipse, you should be doing only spiritual activity during the eclipse. अच्छा टाइम मिला है 2-3 घंटा बैठ के नाम स्मरण करो, कुछ किताबें पढ़ो, you know, chant, do bhajan, do kirtan, do something, come closer to God. So it's a good way of using that opportunity, no?
Yeah, thank you, Proji. Proji, one more question. Like I had asked on the question and answer group, like previous meetings, we were discussing that devotees generally do not go against the material laws. But I had quoted an example of Prabhupada during the, I think, bombing in Calcutta. There is some mention that he was cooking kachoris, and he also went
Prabhuji,
out.
that yeah, I agree with you. See, that was not a material. It was not a material thing. Please remember, it was a man-made problem. See, that whole thing, what you're talking, it was not natural laws that Prabhupada went against. It was man-made problems. So man-made problem mein kya hai na? There is an ambiguity. You just don't know. I mean, there is no guarantee that simply by Prabhupada sitting in Calcutta and making kachori, Prabhupada would be more safe than going to some other place. Are you understanding? No? Because ये प्रकृति का खेल नहीं था, ये मनुष्य का खेल था. ये Second World War was not an act of prakriti in the sense that it was not nature. No? It was people who were doing all kinds of things. Makes sense, no? There is a difference in it.
No, but the principle of keeping ourselves safe, like we also get affected. Na? That also you had said that the leader, whatever they do, the people who are governing, that also affects. No, so that is also part of Prakriti. Only you had told, like what
Yeah. Okay.
does.
So putting it another way, see. So basically, so for that matter, Prabhupada, even on this eclipse thing, he was not very strict about it. Honestly, he was like just find out what other temples are doing in Vrindavan. There is a conversation where he says just find out what other temples are doing and do that. You know, so it is also likely that, you know, there is a personality nature also in terms of how one wants to respond. So as I was telling Rupa Gaur Prabhu also, even if somebody takes some decisions which cause harm only to oneself and not to others, then that's fine. Are you getting it? We don't question that action so much. Like if you see Prabhupada's nature, a little bit it was like that. Where even towards the end, if you see Prabhupada passed away mainly because of diabetes and kidney failure. And even towards the end of Prabhupada's life, he would always eat everything normally. Like he would never follow any restrictions of food. Right? So if something is fried in oil, something is sweet, Prabhupada would take that prasad and he would say that don't stop me. I think that was his personal choice in terms of how he wanted to respond. That was not harming anybody else. It was perhaps in one sense one may feel that it harmed his own body a little bit because he was diabetic and, you know, materially. So that perhaps harmed his own body like that. But I think there we don't question a person so much because that's only on a personal level. Are you getting it, na Prabhuji? Personal level पे मैंने बताया था रूप गौर प्रभु के context में. Only if your action of Prakriti causes damage to 20 other people, then there is a question. आप personally कुछ seriously follow नहीं करना चाहते और आपको सहन करने की क्षमता है. So I think we just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Hare Bol. Is there a question, Rup Gaur Prabhu? Last one? Or your hand is up by mistake or what? Okay, I think there is nobody now. So, okay, thank you very much, everybody. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nita Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare Bol.